that executes even more than once every 7 years is considered a destructive court. Because if the court, just to close this up, if the court is dealing with a lot of criminals that have committed these kind of horrific crimes of murder, then the court better ask themselves, why are there so many criminals in our society? Why have we as the judges not done a good job educating them and preventing this kind of crime? Okay? So, this is something that was actually very important to the Rebbe, this idea that we should in a second. This idea that basically Judaism, from a Jewish perspective, the real way of dealing with crime is not to react to crime. It's to prevent the crime from happening. So I'm going to show you a beautiful video of the Rebbe, this idea.
You have to do it in a good way, in a good time, and to judge all the people according to the wichtige law, according to the right law, and to go from strength to strength. That all the judges will be only in a preventive manner, not to punish someone, but to prevent someone to do something that is wrong.
You know that in my courtroom in that session, the inspiration of the Father should always be present.
That inspiration of God Almighty, I'm only transmitted, trying to transmit without any change. And God Almighty bless you. Especially that I transmit to the judge that I'd be afraid to think something, because the judge will find something wrong. God Almighty bless you. Thank you. We go from strength to strength. God Almighty bless you. We go from strength to strength.
Tomorrow I'm meeting with the Federal Sentencing Commission, and I'm going to tell them your views on imprisonment.
You will support my views also, not only support my views. Support them.
Yes, and the prisoners.
Yes, God Almighty bless you, to go from strength to strength, and to reach the time that there will be no prison, only preventive education, to not to let people to go astray from the right way.
That's what I'm going to tell them.
Yes, God Almighty bless you, but you'll tell them as your personal views also.
Yours and mine too.
Thank you very much. And good service. That is double that is judge.
Okay. So we got the idea over here, which is that we need to have prevention, which is not in any way controversial or revolutionary. The famous line that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And this is true in many areas of our life. We understand that if you take care of yourself before, health-wise, and you exercise, etc., eat healthy, you prevent sickness. If you take care of your car, before it breaks down, it'll be much cheaper in the long term, etc. And yet, even though it's a basic idea, how much of today's focus in dealing with crime is preventative in nature? Very little. Nothing. You give me a big zero. I agree with you. None. Text number 3, Dennis, text number 3, page 188. You have it? Page 188. What's your name? Dennis, huh? Marshall.
We're going to get it eventually, but that's okay. You can call me whatever you want.
Oh, thank you.
What do you want me to read?
Text number 3.
Okay. When one raises the issue of crime prevention with virtually any audience, there is universal agreement that preventing crime and victimization is a desired goal. Yet there is no clear agenda for the prevention of crime in the United States and many other countries. There is no set crime prevention policy in the United States except to investigate the crime, arrest and prosecute the offender, and punish the individual for his or her transgression. This is not what people expect when they ask for crime prevention. Where is the crime prevention policy? Why do we not have a crime prevention policy?
Right, so basically that's the story of our dealing with crime. Number one, the crime happens. We go send police to investigate, we arrest, we prosecute, and we punish, and that is the full extent, maybe we'll have some kind of rehabilitation program in the prison for the person who's already there after they've been prosecuted and punished and they're sitting in prison. But there's no real crime prevention policy in our society. Why?
Parenting. I mean, oftentimes, like when I represent, you can, forget the people I represent, anybody. You can look at the children and see some of it's parenting, some of it isn't, but certainly parenting has a huge influence over our children, what we teach them, what's right and wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to talk about that later.
About the system.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. As a government, as a society, there's no focus on prevention.
I disagree.
Do you think there is?
It may not be obviously where it needs to be, but there's police athletic leagues. We had a thing in Tamarack where we went and mentored. They got deputies going in to the middle school, mentor to at-risk kids. And there's only so much we could do as an agency. So there are things that they do. In some cities they have the basketball leagues, the late night things where they also do kids counseling. So there are things. I mean, granted, it's and obviously in areas it's not making much of an impact, if any. But there are programs.
Not to argue this point, 'cause it's really not an important point, but let's say this police athletic agency, is that to educate the kids not to commit crimes, or is it to break down social barriers? There should be less mistrust of the police.
It's a lot. It's a multifaceted. It's to keep them busy because they're not getting the obviously supervision from the parents. It's to teach them commitment, other values. It's to they also have in certain ones they have counseling that goes along with it. So I mean there are components that do try to get into crime prevention, but just a lot of it's because of the breakdown in society that try and pick up the slack.
Okay. Yes.
I don't know as a government what a government can do other than through their teachers and really it's only through the teachers. Think about how we're affected, right? I send my kids to school. I have my kids 2-3 hours a day. And that's not including when they're under electricity.
Or they're snoring.
So my influence over my kids is limited, right? They're influenced by their teachers, they're influenced by marketers, or advertisers, they're a lot of stuff. It's hard. I don't know where we would go to.
I'm going to talk about the educational system. That's going to be a major discussion we're going to have towards the end of the class. Absolutely. And that's something that as a society we need to change the way education is being educated, the way we are educating our kids. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get there.
I think in a capitalistic society where you have the haves and the have-nots, it's almost impossible to educate children not to steal especially with marketing today. Everybody wants what they can't have.
Excellent. Let's see if I don't change your mind by the end of the class. Exactly what you're saying, yes.
Well, today's news is very, very on target with this. We have people with means who are buying admission to universities for their children. They're teaching, what are they teaching their children? That if you are a have, you can have. If you're a have not, you have not.
Okay, so let's continue exactly what Carol just said. We're going to directly address that, okay? Yes.
One of the best forms of crime prevention, I believe, is having someone who's committed a crime and feels
Very good
regarding it to present their story to the population, such as those who have been arrested for drunk driving or committed something horrendous, being drunk at the wheel. We've heard cases of young people speaking before other young people.
About texting and that's an excellent idea, and that's a very good kind of sentencing reform that a good judge can use to a person to make them tell their story in public. And absolutely, okay.
Again, that's punishment.
That's a punishment, yeah, but yes, but there, yes,
That works to.
that's true.
Right, I mean, I'm not arguing it, but I'm just saying based on.
It is. You are correct. You are correct. for that person to commit the crime, it's a punishment. For the other kids in the classroom that are having this guy come in and talk about how he was drunk and driving, etc., and killed someone, God forbid, that for them is education. But that's still a very specific kind of education about drunk driving. That's not going to prevent theft or a feeling of jealousy from the have-nots to the have-yeses, etc. That's just to be more aware of not drinking and driving at the same time. So let's go back a step. I'm going to ask you it's a question that sounds stupid, it's so obvious, but I want to address this to have more clarity in what we're trying to achieve before we get to solutions, okay? The question is, why is it important for us to prevent crime? Now, it sounds like a stupid question because, what do you mean? It's much better. But there's actually two different perspectives on why we can be preventing crime. I'm going to give you a very different perspective than what most people think about. Most people think about why we're preventing crime. Why are we trying to be preventative to prevent the crime from happening? To protect, it hurts innocent people. So we want to stop innocent people from being hurt before they're hurt instead of punishing the person after they've already hurt you. Right? That's the standard understanding of crime prevention. In the 1960s, when the whole America was suffering this terrible upsurge in violent crimes, especially in the big cities, New York was especially hit by a tremendous feeling of lawlessness that was pervading the streets at night. You barricaded yourself in your homes. And of course, the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn also had a terrible amount of crime going on. And many different politicians who wanted to show they were working to solve the crimes came to meet with the Rebbe as a leader of the Jewish community then to offer solutions, etc. One of those meetings was in 1969 with Francis X. Smith, who was then the president of the New York City Council. I'm going to show you this in person, and then you'll... let me see. Oops.
Jacob Warren Klein is an attorney and executive living in New York. In 1969, as an intern in the office of Francis X. Smith, the president of the New York City Council, he organized a meeting between the city council president and the Rebbe.
We came in the middle of the night. The Rebbe was standing, greeting the council president, greeting everyone who walked in, including myself, in a very modest way, in a very gracious way.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Rabbi, to see me. Yeah, you have such a prominent position that you are protecting the position of 7 or 8 or 9 million people. Well, that may be so, but I want you to know that I come here because I represent you as an individual and your people as an individual. I don't know how often you would have the chance to do it, and so Jacob was kind enough to request it.
He thanks the council president for coming to visit him and recognizes that he had the opportunity, the council president, to meet with the Rebbe's co-workers. For the Rebbe to say that these were his co-workers, it was so humble. What I was learning from it was their herets. I mean, just how does a great man, a great Rebbe, talk about his colleagues, and how does a person greet somebody who's coming in to visit him with the kind of respect that he showed to the leader of 7 to 9 million people, though he wasn't really the leader of 7 to 9 million people. He was the president of New York City Council. The council president sought the Rebbe's advice about policies and programs that might be implemented in New York to better serve the community led by the Rebbe and to better serve the interests of his people.
It is my opinion that if someone is doing something for a part of the population, he is doing at the same time a great service for all the population. Well, I agree with you that if you are doing something for our community, that you are doing at the same time a good service for all New York. I am attempting to do this, and that's why I came to you. Because, as I say, I know what you have done for this particular community. And I know that there are still some problems that you need assistance on, and I want to offer my cooperation in any project that you have. I am trying to do not only for my community, as you call it, but in the realm of my possibilities, but also human beings in New York in general. I know. But I am convinced that if the approach will be the right one, there will be no conflict of interest. It may be only in conflict in the first glance of conflict anticipation. Or conflict where you are taking into account only the short time benefit. But after a serious consideration, it is the need of all the parts of the population to have an harmonious life, and certainly it can be arranged if everyone who needs out infringing on the rights of the someone else, and certainly it can be arranged in such a big city as New York.
Now, at that time, there was a great concern about crime on the streets. There were some blatant episodes where police stood by while crimes were committed. And the basic point Red was making was, these are the policies we need. We need to be able to show respect for the law. We need to enforce the law. If we can enforce the law, we will not only help our people, we'll help all people of New York. And the people we will help the most are the same people who are in fact violating the laws.
On this particular weekend, I stated that we were catering, unfortunately, to an illegal minority who were violating all of the rights, civil, criminal, religious,
And this is
of the majority.
destroying them also.
Pardon me?
It is destroying them also.
It is. It is.
Not only to destroy power.
It destroys everybody.
It destroys
Eventually,
them
it destroys themselves.
Their families and themselves.
The conversation was not really about services to the people of Crown Heights. It was about trying to do good for all the people of New York. And that would be, and the way to do that would have helped, of course, help everybody. That I thought was very impressive to me.
Okay, so if you listen to the beginning of that conversation, it would seem that the Rebbe is saying that if you help the people of Crown Heights, you're helping, everyone gets it. There's a ripple effect, and other law-abiding citizens are protected. But that's not what the Rebbe was saying. If you listen later on in the conversation, it's clear the Rebbe is saying to Mr. Smith, when he said there's an illegal minority that's violating the rights of other people and harming them, the Rebbe interrupts and says it's destroying them, meaning the criminals are being harmed by the criminal activity. The criminals are being harmed. The Rebbe is saying that if we were to reduce crime, it wouldn't just help the law-abiding citizens. It would help the criminals as well. Meaning, often when we talk about getting tough on crime, there's politicians and everything talking like there's a us versus them mentality. There's the good guys and there's the bad guys, right? And we have to be tough against a lawless people. But to the Rebbe, it wasn't a zero-sum game. It wasn't that there's the good guys and the bad guys, and if you get rid of them, you help us. The point is that by getting rid of the crime, it not only protects society, it will protect the potential criminals from all the harm that they would go through by being criminal, by being arrested, by not being able to take care of their families, by the violence that comes from gangs, etc., etc. Which means that there's really two reasons why Judaism is advocating to prevent crime. One is to protect innocent people. The second is because we care about criminals. We don't want the criminals to hurt themselves. Meaning, we need to have a protection for. We need victim protection, and we need criminal protection. Which, by the way, fits in perfectly with our opening lesson. What do we explain in the very first class? What is the Torah theory of punishment? Rehabilitation. Rehabilitation. And not just, what does rehabilitation mean in a secular society? In a secular mindset, what's rehabilitation? If we rehabilitate the prisoner, then even after they leave prison, they will not commit the crime again and hurt somebody else.
And they improve their own life.
Right. This is exactly the point. The point of rehabilitation is not just a means to an end. It's not just that by rehabilitating the criminal, they won't commit a crime and hurt somebody else. The point is, as you're saying correctly, the Jewish perspective of rehabilitation is an end unto itself. It's an end unto itself that we have a responsibility to look out for every single person in society without leaving anybody behind. Just like as Jews, we have a mitzvah. We're obligated to help poor people by giving them charity. And just like we're obligated, if someone lost something, to do hashavas aveda, to return the lost object. And just like we're obligated to help a victim in danger by fighting against the person in the road, the one that's attacking him, we are obligated to help the criminal learn how to not be a criminal, to protect him from the harm of being a criminal.
That's what rehabilitation means, though. In the general sense, not just in the Jewish sense. If you rehabilitate someone, you bring him that person
Yeah.
to a level where
Yeah, but you're correct. You're correct. But what's the reason normally why many people want to do rehabilitation? To prevent them from committing a crime again.
I don't, okay.
But we asked before, why do we want to prevent crime? Someone said before, to prevent them from harming innocent people. But it's not just about the innocent people, it's about them as well. This is a Jewish view on why we need to prevent crime. Not only for the innocent, obviously for the innocent. Obviously, we have an obligation to protect the innocent. We also have an obligation to protect the criminals. And by the way, if this would be the mindset of the police and of the whole law enforcement, there'd probably be a lot less friction between certain communities that feel that the police are out to get them versus a feeling of we're all trying to make society a better place. Which is why we need some of these kinds of programs to try and show these people that we're not out to get them, not bad guys. But it's a mindset that would bring a lot more cooperation and more trust and less crime. So, how do you do this? What's the best way to prevent crime? So we already had some ideas before, right? Of having former criminals speak. What other ideas we mentioned before? Parenting classes.
To me, the best way is education.
Education. Any other ideas before we go into some...
I think it goes from the very beginning to parenting. And when parenting doesn't work, it's when the society is all broken.
Okay.
I mean, 20 seconds. When I was, I don't know, 5 years old, whatever, I rode the bus with my mother. We weren't wealthy. We rode the bus downtown, we went to the five and dime, whatever. I picked something up. We got almost all the way home. My mother said, "What'd you get?" Rode the bus. When I got down and returned it. That was the lesson.
Excellent. Excellent.
And that's why I think parenting and working with parents might be where there are whole households is probably the first best step.
We are going to talk about education and parenting. We're going to talk about both of those. They kind of go hand in hand. They're not exclusively separate subjects, but we will talk about each one of those individually. Okay? Promise. We're going to talk about a few things. Obviously, if Judaism believes so strongly in preventative medicine or in preventing crime, so Judaism would have a lot of ideas on this topic, correct? So let's discuss 4 things tonight. First 3, and then the most important one will be education. Number 1 we're going to discuss tonight is going to be the effectiveness of punishment as a deterrent to prevent a crime from happening. Okay? Number 2, we're going to discuss I'm surprised no one even said this, the correlation between employment or poverty and crime, making sure people have a job, that they're not in desperate situations. Number 3, we're going to discuss the family structure, the family stability of a healthy home, a family home. And then last, but most importantly, it's not only not least, but the real, what we really want to talk about tonight is about education, both in the home and in school. Okay? Changing how we educate our young. So let's start with number 1, education. There we go. So when you're driving down the highway, when you're driving to school, so I know when I drive to school in the morning, I don't go to school in the morning now, it's just my schedule, but I know when I used to every single day, you know exactly where the cops are, right? You know exactly, if you're going down Atlantic Boulevard, you know where the speed trap, you know exactly where they're waiting. Exactly. So, unless you're an idiot, you're going to slow down before that spot. Because you know this is a school, and you know the police are, you know exactly they're going to stand in the meeting under the shade, you know exactly where they're going to be. They always get people, but the prospect of people doing a crime when they know they'll be punished for it lowers the odds for most people, not all, to not commit a crime. You find this in the famous Mishnah, text number 4. Sorry, want to be text number 4? Page 191.
Pray for the well-being of the government, for were it not for the fear of its punishment, people would swallow each other alive.
Right, so this is an obvious idea that government creates a certain stability in society to prevent crime, and therefore the next logical step is that if you have a weak or inconsistent system of punishment, what will happen? Crime will increase. You need to have strong law enforcement and strong punishments in place to ensure that many people will be afraid of breaking the law.
Which goes back to parenting, by the way.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
parents that are consistent and actually maintain their rules and are willing to discipline, yes. Yes, absolutely. There's a concept called an egla rufa. In Jewish law, there's something called an unsolved murder. You find a corpse lying outside of a city. We don't know who killed this person or how they died. There's a very elaborate ritual that is done in which the members of the Sanhedrin come, they travel from Jerusalem, they have to measure every city around this corpse, even if they know where the closest city is, in order that everyone in all these cities will say, oh, look, the Sanhedrin came, the rabbis are here, the measuring will create a buzz about this person that was found dead. Which city was the closest city? So even if you found, they know it's a mile to, I don't know, to this city and 10 miles to this city, they would still measure both cities. This way created buzz to see which was the closest city. The elders of that city were then held responsible for the crime. They would come out, they would take a young bull, they would slaughter it, they would actually witness it, they would kill it without slaughtering it, and they would pour the blood into a river, and they would say a whole prayer, saying, Hashem, absolve us, God, and do not let the guilt for the blood of the innocent remain among your people Israel. And they say, like, we wash our hands of the blood, etc. Now, as we discussed before, it should be the murderer who is responsible for the crime, not the elders of the city that's closest to where this dead person is found. And nevertheless, part of the blame is put on the leaders of this city, besides that they didn't educate, we talked about this in Sanhedrin before, but that they didn't have proper law enforcement in place to prevent criminals from getting away with their crimes. Text number 5, Neil, this is perfect. Page 192.
The sin of the people is that their laxity in administering punishment enabled this murder. If the city had an appropriately consistent system of justice, the murderer would not have had the audacity to kill in its jurisdiction. He would have been deterred by the law of the city and by its judges, fearing that they would pursue him, apprehend him, and punish him harshly.
Okay, so we need to have strict but fair, obviously, punishment with consistency and follow-through that these punishments will take place. Unfortunately, is that many criminals are able to use different legal loopholes. I know it's a big problem that they talk about in the juvenile system. Like, kids get caught, and they did a crime. There's no discussion about it. And yet they're booked, they're put in, and 3 hours later, they're back on the streets because the police can't keep them. I don't know all the details. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but it's not really the point. The point is that if just having laws on the books that are not going to be carried through, and the kids know there's no deterrent, that they'll be able to get out in 3 hours, they're just going to get booked and fingerprinted, and they'll just collect a rap sheet of arrest after arrest without any real consequence. So then you don't have any effective deterrent to stop them from committing the crime. And indeed, during the conversation that the Rebbe had with Mr. Smith, that we were talking about before, the Rebbe was pushing very strong there should be stronger enforcement of the laws that are on the books. If you don't enforce the laws, and you're going to give all these loopholes for criminals to get away with their crimes, you have a problem, yes.
You realize that there's a contradiction, that the same thing you're advocating, the enforcement, the strong deterrence, has been weakened by the very people who are pushing the agenda of not giving second chances, of giving different kind of punishment, more rehabilitation. I know philosophically, you're speaking of this, and I guess you can do it as a rabbi, but in the real world, there's consequences for like the Promise program and other programs that are going on in more progressive places in the country when you take away the power of the police, and whether or not that's justified due to the past abuse or not, I'm not arguing that, but I'm just saying you can't, I don't see how you have both.
Absolutely. What I'm saying very clearly now is that I'm not, without discussing the specifics of the Promise program, but in general, when a kid knows that there will be no consequence to their crime, that's a very, very dangerous thing to have in society. Now, it's not a contradiction to what we were talking in the first lesson about putting people in prison for life or for 10 years for a crime they've committed. There has to be punishment. We've never once advocated that people should be punished less for their crimes. We've advocated that people should be punished smarter for their crimes. Punished smarter doesn't mean just taking everyone of every kind of crime, whether it's white-collar crime, sexual crime, money crimes, and dumping them all into the same prison system where they just sit there together and they're not being rehabilitated. We've absolutely, in case, yes, we have come and said that the prison system is overly excessive where it's not accomplishing anything. Putting someone into prison is not, although it's not Judaism doesn't believe in it, where you just having them sit there. If that has to be done, it has to be done. It has to be done the way that there's a rehabilitation process in place, that being in prison is not just all that's happening to them.
Well, forget about the prison. Let's talk about reality right now. You have 15, 14-year-old kids who are stealing cars, breaking into cars. What do you suggest get done to them?
They have to have severe consequences.
Well, what do you consider severe? Because they're not getting anything now.
That's the problem. They're not getting anything. They're not getting anything. So whatever it is that there has, I don't know what the sentencing laws are. I don't know what with something this is not a conversation I'm equipped to really, off the cuff, give an idea what the crime should be for a 15-year-old for breaking into a car window and stealing a GPS system, etc., or a DVD system. The point is that when they know that they can get away with it and they can get booked in and booked out in a few hours, that's where the lawlessness comes into play. There has to be follow through that. If this is the law, there's no promise program. This program, you're going to jail for 30 days, you're getting on your record, whatever. But again, I don't know a specific solution, what the punishment should be. But there has to be real consequences. But consequences shouldn't only be punitive. That's what we were advocating in the first lesson of this course. The consequences that are done should be a teaching moment. So maybe that kid should have to go and speak to his class about the fact that he was caught stealing, etc. I'm just giving an example we mentioned before, Steve said before. I'm not saying that is the answer. But there has to be a real consequence. And we have to make sure when we think of the consequence, when we're thinking of a consequence that will actually educate this kid not to break into another car window next week.
See, part of the challenge, though, in the real world, that you're I don't know what the Mishnah or what anyone says about mental health issues. I mean, if you're taking someone as a whole person who we consider normal, what is normal, but we consider falls in that range of normal, there's like millions of people that fall outside of the box. It's part of the problem with education, because it's like if you don't fit in the box, there's something wrong with you. And I'm listening to this, like I remember a kid, I was speaking in front of the boot camp when they had it, and one of the kids was a drug dealer, pretty sophisticated, young guy, sophisticated, 18 years old. He was sophisticated, had a group of people that worked for him. And I was talking to him, and I said, you have a great business mind. Why don't you take what you have and go buy a kiosk or 2 kiosks in the mall
and make money,
and sell, back when they were selling, Sprint plans and stuff. People could do that. But they don't want to. So part of it is also a societal issue, because when I talked to him, it was cool for him to flash a lot of money. He picked up a lot of girls. I mean, it's societal. And some of what we're talking about, and I get what some of what you're talking about is like up in the air type of things. I mean, it's beautiful and it's wonderful. It's just not real.
Which part of having severe punishments or following through, or?
Well, the severe punishments aren't going to happen because the rules. Kids' brains don't develop fast enough. I mean, there's people like me who are defense attorneys who come up with these ideas that break down the people that really want to have strict laws and stuff. I mean, it's just the way the system is. And I'm not saying I'm the cause of that. I'm just saying that there's equal weight on one side for severe punishment. I just had this conversation with one of my friends about the death penalty again, and the Parkland thing. It's like,
I'm going to take a question one second. I want to change the word I just said. I use the word severe punishment. It's not the right word. Deterring punishment. A deterring punishment does not necessarily need to be severe. It could be embarrassment and shame. It could be publicly being embarrassed for their crime with their kids in class. I'm not saying that there's always a one-size-fits-all solution. The point is not about how severe the punishment is, because this is also where I think some people are going wrong from earlier classes. We've never been advocating that criminals shouldn't be held accountable for their crimes, ever. We've been advocating for paradigm shift in how the legal system punishes these people for their crimes. Instead of just punishing them by locking them out of society's sight and out of mind, where they're incapacitated to be able to do a crime, we have to change their thought process. How can we punish them in a way that will change them and transform them? Now, that being said, deterrence is only going to work up to a certain point. Deterrence is not a one-size-fits-all. This is not the root of why there's crime, and good deterrence would not stop all crimes. Not everyone cares. Some people are short-term thinkers. They don't think about what will happen to them, especially when you're a young 15-year-old kid. You don't think about what's going to be your long-term consequences. Some people think they're smarter than they're going to get away with it. So I'm not saying this is the solution at all, but we do need to have follow-through that when the crime is committed, there's a deterrent, that a kid should be scared to be arrested by the cops. The fact that today you can have kids that are arrested and they know that it's a joke and they're like so not.
Some kids, it's a reward.
And that's a problem.
Back into their place where they live, and here you go.
Because they know nothing happened to them, so it shows on their toughness, how macho they are. They were arrested.
Parents used to be able to, do something about it. Like Mark said earlier, there's one-parent homes. There's no parent homes where these kids are completely unsupervised. He talks about, his kids that he gets in 3 hours a day. There's kids who don't get any supervision 24 hours a day. They literally are out in the streets. They don't go to school. They get no supervision whatsoever. So you arrest them. Maybe you call the mom who's got her own issues, and she comes to pick him up. Maybe she doesn't, and he gets released anyway. And it's just a revolving system. So I don't know what you could do for those kids.
Yes, Mark. And then go back to you, Marshall. Marshall. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm seeing it. I'm having his problem. There's a dichotomy there between when you want to say swift, punishment, or not a punishment necessarily, but execution of the law. Like, why is this little piece of crap still sitting in jail, waiting for a trial?
You're talking about Nicholas Cruz. Yes.
And they have the building up
as a permanent trauma to the kids.
17 injured kids. They don't talk about the injured. Running around the school. The kids, the victims of these crimes are continually being terrorized. Let's talk about the victims for a second. Why hasn't this kid, death penalty or not, been convicted and the freaking building
demolished
down, and the people that are injured be honored? And I mean,
because we have a legal system, and the legal system is incredibly slow. And you want to protect the people who need. I mean, the worst crimes like this crime needs the absolute best defense, and therefore the state attorney. I just had this conversation with the chief assistant state attorney, guy I've known for 35 years, and he says the people in Parkland are hating me and hating us because the building's still standing.
I agree. It should be demolished.
But they can't.
They could. They want to use it as crime evidence.
They're going to walk people through there.
You can take a video of it, but whatever. That's.
If they agree, the defense would plead guilty and end all this if Mike Satz would agree to life in prison, but he wants the death penalty. And that's what Reagan said, and that's why Mike Satz made the decision to keep the building up. That's his decision.
When it's costing the sheriff's office money to have a guard to protect it, or air conditioning the building, or there's like plumbing in there. There's all.
Politics, but some of that is politics too.
We're going a little bit off subject because this is a specific, very raw, specific story. But I'm not sure. What was your question? What was your?
My point is that if you want to have death penalty or not, in this particular situation, this kid is. I forgot my point.
You can't in the details, yeah.
This kid is now sitting in jail, getting love letters, and getting people sending, making him into like some kind of a cult hero, because people unfortunately go to the macabre. I mean, all this kids wearing black and goth and all this stuff that they're wearing. I mean, it's terrible. And all they learn is violence. So unless they need to see the punishment on this kid.
Absolutely.
The punishment on this kid will not stop the next shooting.
That's,
I don't necessarily.
I don't necessarily agree either, because we've to a certain extent glorified these shooters, and it creates copycat killers. Yes, yes.
Take it in another direction.
And then we're going to continue, yeah?
Speaker the other day, these kids who were victims that day are still hiding under the bed when they hear a siren. They're all still needing all kinds of mental help. And what about their rehabilitation? If we're talking about
Yeah, we're so off subject. Yes, absolutely. We're not discussing this, the Stoneman Douglas shooting. It's not.
I don't think so, because you're talking about.
By the way, I'm going to go through one thing then. By the way, for those victims, if they would have seen Nicholas Cruz being executed already, would that have helped them with their healing process?
I think if the building had come down and a punishment had been given, yes, it would have helped them.
So that alone is a reason to speed up the process. There's no reason to drag it out for 3 years or however long, and all the money that it costs to do this. I agree. There's no reason why it has, but that's not. We're not going to change the legal system here. What we do need to change it should be, yes, deterrent is though to see a punishment, to see whatever the point is not what the punishment is. The point is to know that the punishment is going to be carried out. There's going to be actual. I'm not going to show the next video. The Rebbe was the second part of that meeting. The Rebbe was speaking to him and said, what the problem in the 60s in New York was that there was a feeling of lawlessness because, again, people were getting away with all these crimes and the police weren't prosecuting. There were some famous stories then of police watching a crime happening and not getting involved for whatever reason. And basically, it created a mindset in people's minds that we can, yeah, of course the law is ABC, but who cares? They're not going to actually do anything to us. The deterrent effect was destroyed.
You're 100% correct that there has to be
A deterrent effect.
A deterrent effect.
SWIFT, that's part of it.
But a deterrent effect is not going to change our.
Absolutely. So with that thought in mind, a deterrent effect is, we're going to skip the next video because of the time, but a deterrent effect is absolutely not the solution to preventing crime. It's a part of it, it's important, but it's not the solution. Agreed. It's a step, and it would help eliminate some crime. I don't know how much, but definitely some. It's a beginning. It's a good thing to do, but yes, that is not the solution at all. That's why we're doing it first. We're kind of like getting it out of the way. The other idea that's talked about a lot, especially in some people say that why is there crime? Because there's poverty, because there's haves and have-nots, and etc. And it's our fault that we're not, we're born with privilege, and therefore it's our fault that these people are committing crimes because they don't have the privileges or the blessings of life that we have. Now, the Talmud does teach that a lack of employment does lead to higher crime. Text number 6, carry on with 6a.
When people don't teach their child a trade, it's as though they taught the child thievery.
Okay, text 6b. Why is not teaching your child a craft or a trade teaching your child to be a thief?
Because these children will not have a trade with which to feed themselves. They will take to the highway and rob others.
Okay, so it's right in the Talmud. I'm sure statistics definitely correlate this, that people that are poor, that don't have anything, like a certain desperation that comes from being poverty. There's also Judaic sources that we're not going to get into, that the boredom of unemployment leads to crime because you have when you don't have a structure to your day and you don't have a feeling of fulfillment and purpose and you don't belong to a law-abiding society, so then automatically you feel okay doing a crime. Yes?
I don't know if we're going to get to it or they're alluding it, but I think there's a big problem with mental health issues too.
We're not going to discuss that today because that's not something we're going to change in society. Society has to become much more aware of mental health issues. That's absolutely. Having a mental health issue doesn't make you a criminal, though. In fact, what we're going to talk about, the educational aspect, will address it not directly, but
the challenge and the reason I brought up the mental health thing is you can do your 4 steps in a perfect world, and you're still going to have people. I can give you 1,000 examples.
Okay, let's finish the class. Let's see, then we'll come back. Let's see when we talk about education if this doesn't affect. Let's just using an example. Again, being autistic doesn't make you a murderer. Doesn't make you a murderer. But some autistic kids who are less aware of, their impact of their action. I'm not saying that it's autistic kids only, but this mental health issue or depression might lead to certain crimes that I'm going to try and perhaps suggest through changing the way we educate kids would deal with that too. Although indirectly, not directly. Let's work that way. So obviously, poverty is an element in crime, and if we could reduce poverty, that would obviously reduce crime. But that's first of all very hard to talking about theoretical, right? Reducing poverty there's no simple solution to reducing poverty. It depends who you ask and how to do it, and it's very, very difficult. Besides to the fact that from a Jewish perspective, there will always be poor people until Mashiach comes, because also we're able to do tzedakah and do charity. And secondly, there's plenty of crimes committed by people that have plenty of money, who are not poor, who have jobs, who have income, who have no, so that's not the solution. Yes.
Big on, news now, yeah.
Yes.
But the drug issue is also a big problem. They can't get money for drugs, so they go out and they steal.
That's the Nebuch. They're poor. They don't have money for drugs. Okay.
No, not just people who are of modest means or have money, they have money pretty quickly if they need drugs.
Right.
Again, we're not denying that poverty is a cause of crime, and not having poverty and reducing unemployment would help. Absolutely. But that is not the cause. Again, it's not the cause of crime.
But it's
Because
not only poor people.
Yeah, drugs has nothing to do with it.
that's what I'm saying. There's people that steal money that are millionaires that are still committing financial crimes, and you have people that commit.
I have a friend who grew up in a horrible section of the Bronx. But surrounded by gangs, the whole bit. And his parents raised him right. He ended up going to Brandeis, and he ended up going to Harvard, and he's a brilliant attorney. So you can grow up, excuse the expression, piss poor, and it doesn't matter. Again, it goes back a lot to the parent.
Excellent. I'm going to discuss later the many Jewish rabbis who grew up in total poverty and were paradigms of honesty and ethics and all that, because poverty does not mean you have to be a criminal in any way, shape, or form. Yes, if you're poor and you don't have a job, is it more likely statistically that you'll get involved in crime? Yes. But that is not the reason why a person commits a crime, because they are poor. That's not the reason. So, okay. Next. Another issue that's always raised, a lot of people are discussing crime prevention, is single parent homes or no parent homes, and the lack of a family structure to give a proper environment in which a child can grow and flourish and become a successful, functioning, productive member of society. And this also has sources in Torah. There's a verse, we're going to quote text number 7, about a man that has 2 wives, one that he loves and one that he hates. He knows we probably have 2 wives. It's hard enough with one, right? It's 2 wives. So he has problems in the home. The Torah says he loves one wife, he hates the other wife, so it's obviously not a happy home over there. And the very next verse in the Torah, after talking about these two, this family discord, is about the rebellious child. The Ben Sora Remora, the child that rebels against his parents, who steals money to go buy meat and wine, or today it would be drugs, etc. So, from the fact, we're not going to read it inside, it's text number 7, but the point is, it's a very basic idea in Judaism that parents have to be role models to their children. When you have a beautiful home and a loving home, you can be living in the most poor, crime-ridden area, as you just said about your friend, and still have a strong, that's what I'm looking for, strong support system, a strong core to be able to flourish and to be successful and to be honest despite what's going on around you. And again, that would definitely help reduce crime. But there's no solution. You can't. You can make everyone get married and make everyone not live in single parent homes. It's not feasible to do that. And again, so just mentioned before, we can show many examples of people that were poor or that didn't have proper upbringings, who are very ethical, proper people and didn't commit crimes. And you can have people who grew up in perfect homes that commit crimes, etc. So let's get to the most important issue we want to deal with tonight, which was raised by a few people. Education. how education can be the most effective method of crime prevention in our society. I want to begin this section by a poll, okay, by a survey. How would you rate, scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your child's public school education?
0.
0, okay. Because you put your kids in the grandkids in the private school, yeah?
Very widely from
You, for your kids, or for your grandkids? If you know. Or talk about, go back in history, go back to ancient times when you were a parent with kids in school.
7 or 8.
7 or 8.
I give it an 8 to a 9.
Okay,
I would give my kids' education a 10.
10.
But where?
They were educated in Syosset, Long Island.
Okay, and that was how many years ago?
And how much did your taxes pay?
Well, okay.
Many
Who
years
has kids
ago.
today? Anyone in the Faith, how would you rate your kids' public school education?
Less than 5.
Less than 5. Her kids are in public school now, yes.
I have found that in the public schools here in Broward County, if you have a child, and I have grandchildren in this system, that is right, that is a self-starter, the system is fabulous. I mean, I have a grandson that took cooking in the high school with an actual cordon bleu chef. If your child is compromised in some way, the system is wonderful. If you fall in that middle, you're lost.
Yeah, yes.
You're really
Yes.
I would disagree. My oldest, who is now 26, but went to Coral Glades, okay? He went every day to school, every day. He never skipped. He wasn't a skipper. He would always bring me home 1A and the rest F's. 1A was in gym, okay? This is an honest story.
Sure.
The end of the year comes, because of the No Child Left Behind, he went right to become a sophomore. At the end of that year, he went right to become a junior. When he was a junior, I said, listen, I said, you need 24 credit hours to graduate and you have like 5. I said, I don't condone you quitting school, but to me, all you're doing is sitting in class disrupting those who want to learn.
I'm getting nothing.
And you're not doing it. He would even do his work, not turn it in. Why do it? But whatever. And so I signed him up, and he got a job, and he's been working ever since. Why would you pass somebody through just because of No Child Left Behind? That's less than.
Yes, quickly. Yeah.
My husband taught in a Jewish charter school. And we used to have a group of the kids come for Shabbat dinner every 2 weeks, the students. And they would tell me that they knew that there was a different set of rules in the school for the children who came from parents with money.
Okay, that's another discussion. Let's just focus on the poll because I realize we're very, very late and we're only like halfway through the class. Okay, how on a scale of 1 to 10, to what degree do you think that your child received in school the skills that help them get a job and succeed as adults? Just around the room.
1.
1. 0. Oh boy. Yeah. And on this side. Skills to be successful, who they are now in life. What they learn, geometry, math, science. How much of those skills they learn in school help them become successful, productive adults?
Going from elementary to high school?
No, not high school. I mean for life. High school is not life. For life. They're married, successful kids, right?
Very little.
That's not a fair question.
Why not?
Because you want to know
how much do what they learn in school help them be productive in life?
Okay.
Yeah.
My grandson is the perfect example. Absolutely 0.
0. We're getting a lot of 0s and 1s in this room. Okay. Next question.
He still can't hold a job down.
Okay. Now comes the real clincher, the real question, which we're really going to, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does school give your child good character, virtue, humility, self-control, self-mastery, empathy, kindness, and that most important quality of being what we call a mensch? How much of those character skills that your child has do they get from school? Not much.
Depends on which kid.
Okay, give me the average.
Some 6 to a 7, some a 2 to a 3.
Okay.
I agree with that. I mean, it depends on the child. I mean, I grew up in a, middle-class Long Island home, no diversity, it was a Jewish-Italian neighborhood. Mike, Andrew, my son, and he
Yeah.
went to Monarch and Coconut Creek schools, and he dealt with people that I never did, and I think it teaches you, besides the socialization and everything, that it does, help you. Now, it could also be someone could go through the same exact thing, and maybe it doesn't do anything for us. I think it depends a lot on the child as well.
Yes, last.
It depends on the school. My grandkids go to a private school and you caught cheating, you're thrown out, they drug test. I think it depends on the school.
Okay, very good.
A lot of it depends on what the kid learns at home.
Yeah, but the question specifically about the schools, the question here is specifically, what from 1 to 10, how much is school giving your child a character, besides for the skills to be successful at a job, etc., how much are they giving your child the character skills, the self-control, the humility, the empathy, the kindness that is needed to be a healthy, kind? You say none.
It's two parts to the equation. It's the quality of the teacher. If a teacher is empathetic, if the teacher has virtue and humility and teaches self-mastery, and you have a kid that's willing to listen to it, then you got a perfect combination. And it's
That was 2 ifs, but yes.
But that's it. Otherwise.
Okay.
But it depends on where they're coming from, what they're getting at home.
And also what they're getting within the school, because my grandson
Goes together.
My grandson graduated from Fosnack, and I worked there for a while. And let me tell you, those values are taught there. And
In a Jewish, but that's a Jewish school.
Jewish school, right.
Yeah, of course. That's a Jewish school. Okay.
I know you told me that,
And they came to our house and they said.
If you look at text number 8, from Jessica Lahi, you'll see that many people feel, a Gallup poll shows that over 90% of American adults support the teaching of honesty, democracy, acceptance, etc., and it seems odd that in education we no longer have these things. Many feel are not in the curriculum the way it should be. The point is as follows. I'm going to move to the point. Starting in the 1960s, education in the schools began to be focused only on knowledge, and character was not in the equation at all. And the Rebbe spoke about this time and time again, that poverty and unemployment are not the causes of crime, which was a big theory back then. Many Jewish rabbis who were very poor, maybe grew up in unhealthy homes, but they were great people. Because even though poverty might correlate with crime, it might allow a person, might enable it in a certain context, that's not what's causing it. There's 2 texts I want to read. Let's read text number 9. Mark, you want to read text number 9? This is from this text we're going to read now. Is from the 2 weeks after, from March 30, 2 weeks after, in April of 1981, 2 weeks after John Hinckley Jr. shot and injured President Reagan in an attempted assassination attempt. And the Rebbe had been speaking a lot about education, how our kids are growing without values. Go on, text number 9.
The modern secular educational system is premised on the notion that it is sufficient for children to accumulate knowledge about numerous disciplines. What the educational system fails to teach is that the purpose beyond the accumulation of all this knowledge is to bring goodness to others, which is also true goodness to oneself. In fact, the system is such that students see the goal of their learning as a means to pursue their own careers and display their own prowess, leading to a sense of self-centeredness and narcissism. This reality is due to the assumption that we may not interfere with the lives of children, we must allow them to develop autonomously. Although humans are born with negative impulses, many assume that parents have no responsibility to change this, but should allow the children to develop as they see fit. To be sure, children are legally required to attend school, but as noted, modern schools operate as though their sole task is to provide children with knowledge. The assumption is that schools need not teach students how to be a mensch, how to be a decent citizen, how to develop virtuous character traits, and how the primary object of all learning is to promote goodness in one's surroundings. This sort of education is a cause for criminal activity later in life. In fact, one message that children often hear in school is that they ought to behave properly because of the threat of punishment. The education anchored in the fear of punishment, coupled with the aforementioned narcissism, can lead students to the conclusion that they can outsmart the system and avoid any punishment. In fact, they may even engage in harmful activity in order to express how independent-minded they are, and how they can completely disregard all others, both their victims and the criminal justice system.
Wow, okay. Let's do text number 10, then we'll discuss them both. Another text from the Rebbe, a similar idea. Steve, you want to read?
One message that children often absorb from modern entertainment is that they ought to pursue whatever their hearts desire. And if they are clever and their parents have told them that they are, they will be able to satisfy these desires successfully. But this messaging can ultimately lead to criminal activity. It is human nature to be unsatisfied with what one has and to incessantly desire more. Accordingly, if we teach children that they must obtain their every whim, the result would be citizens who are even willing to steal to satisfy their desires. Unfortunately, this is a common problem in this country. Our society has propped up a sacred but ultimately false value, and we cannot interfere in the lives of others, which is why we cannot stop children from doing what they want. In this climate, even when one chooses to reprimand a child for selfish or harmful activity, it is often done quite mildly, without disciplining the child. One need not to teach a child to steal to raise a generation of thieves. It is sufficient that we teach our children to be self-centered, and this can be a direct cause of criminal activity. We need not give our children everything they desire. We have to explain to them that it is in their interest that they not pursue or obtain each and every one of their whims. After all, when physicians instruct children to refrain from certain foods, warning that consuming these foods will be dangerous, even life-threatening, the children listen to these instructions, even if the foods are tempting and coated with sugar. They listen not because they understand the medical reality, because they are happy to trust the physician who invested many years studying medicine. We must convey the same message to our children in order to ensure the well-being of their health.
Okay, so two very powerful texts. Let's unpack this now in one comprehensive idea. We're used to learning in the Torah how every single human being is created with a special soul, right? It's a part of God's. However, it's also true that the natural state of the human being is an animal. When we are born on a conscious level as selfish creatures who only care about ourselves. And that's normal. That's the way we were created as babies. We only care about ourselves, and we have a somewhat animal-like sense. Now, the human being has the ability to grow out of these selfish tendencies and become a kind, empathetic, caring person, and to control, or at least tame, their animalistic desires. However, we don't naturally outgrow our selfishness. We don't naturally learn how to regulate our self-control. If you leave a person to their own devices and you don't train them, they will remain the same selfish person they were when they were created. The only way for a person to become a kind person or a disciplined, responsible adult is by training them to learn how to control their animalistic impulses. They say that the difference between boys and men is nothing but the price of their toys, right? This is a certain human nature. You need to be educated and trained to think differently than a selfish animal. It does not occur automatically. Now the problem is today, there's become an accepted idea that kids can tell the parents and teachers, you have to accept me for who I am. Accept me for who I am. Now that's a great idea in marriage, not in education. In marriage, yes, but in education, you have to accept if your child's a righty or a lefty, or if your child is shy or athletic or more of a bookworm. But for a parent or as a teacher, to say, I will accept you the way you are, and I'm not going to try and make you a better person, is the ultimate of negligence. As parents or as teachers, we don't in any way want our children to remain the way they are in terms of their self-control, in terms of their humility, in terms of their discipline and their ability to self-regulate. We have to make them grow and mature. So what happens in school? First thing that happens in school is, okay, they're born untamed, and we have to facilitate that. So they come to school, and what does school teach them? It only teaches them math, geometry, science, history, language, Spanish maybe, maybe some civics. So the first thing that's happening is they're learning from omission. They know that school is important. The government regulates that they go to school. Their parents make them crazy to go to school and to be successful in school. So they know that the most important thing for them in their life is to be good at school. So they think that whatever is important for me in life is at school, because that's where everything is about school. My parents tell me to go to school. So they go to school, and what does school tell them? Only about abstract information, about knowledge. So by omission, they learn that ethics, discipline, kindness, humility, etc., that's not important. If it was important, I would have a test on it. I would have a class on it. The way I have a class on math. That's number one. Number two is that if we don't actively do something to change the nature of the human being in our classrooms, it's true for parents too, but I'm talking about the classroom first, then they will remain the same untamed animal. They'll just get more of an animal than they were when they started. If you have an animal, a zoo, anything, if you don't train the animal, they're going to remain animals. You can't expect them to learn tricks if you don't train them. So you take a kid, you put him into the classroom, if you don't spend time with a focused curriculum and a focused thought on how am I going to change the personality, the character, the empathy, the interaction of these kids, besides for information, then you're not going to change them.
Well, some schools now have some of the I don't know about Broward County, but some of the smaller school districts have introduced things like Citizen of the Week, kindest student, most helpful.
That's great. So I'm not saying that this doesn't. I'm not saying that our schools don't have any kind of educational value on, but it's definitely not given the same importance or prestige as honor roll in math, etc. There's no set time where a teacher is spending time teaching kids on these things. Now, in my kids' school, they do. In my kids' school, there's a teacher whose job is social interaction. I forgot what it's called, social intelligence, something along those lines. And every week she goes into, I get an email from her, every week she goes into the class, she teaches different skills, and she sends an email to the parents to, work on this particular thing during the week, and this is what we discuss, so you can continue at home. So they have in their curriculum, there's a special person, this is for all the grades, or all the grades, I'm not sure which grades are in it. I'm sure two of my girls are in it. They come into the class and they have, what's the term? Acting it out, where they have role playing, etc. Learning how to talk about emotions. These are skills that are being taught. I know my kids are being taught that, but they're in a private school, and it's in the curriculum that there's someone who is thinking and preparing, how am I going to train these kids to learn how to have empathy and to be able to communicate emotions in a healthy way? In the majority of schools, that's not happening, at least not with the urgency and with the importance that it needs to have. Third is that by making it all only about knowledge and about information, we're telling our kids that as long as you have information, that's all that matters. It's information is power, and then we increase the chance they're going to use that knowledge in self-serving, selfish, egotistical, and perhaps even bad ways. Because the information is only being taught to them for them to be successful. So all I need to do is figure out how can I use the information you're telling me to better my life, to make me more happy. So if I want to use that information to evade, to do a crime and get away with it, that's fine. I use the information you taught me for what I want. That's okay. You understand? There's another problem. Besides what they're not absorbing in school, they are absorbing what society is telling them, what Hollywood is telling them, what all the TV shows, what all the advertisements are telling them, which is, first of all, about give, I want more, I need more, then you'll be happy. And modern entertainment has created this myth that everyone ought to pursue their desires, and who are the success stories? Those who have all the wealth, and those who are fancy, and who have a big car, and whatever. So society, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's the movies, whether it's the entertainment industry, whatever it is, it's not any one particular culprit. It's a whole society has created this idea that success is about what you have. Success is not about how much you give, or how much you do for someone, or what kind of character you have. How much do I have? And I have, every movement, it's about the same. I have to achieve my goals and to fulfill my desires and to live with the person that I fell in love with. That's the storyline that's our kids are absorbing as their paradigm of viewing life. Now, many parents feed that by giving our kids whatever they ask for. Many parents feel that I have to give my kids what they ask for. I want to be a good parent. I want my kids to love me. I want my kids to be happy with me. So we give our kids whatever they ask for. And actually all we're doing is feeding the narrative that they've already picked up from society, from Hollywood, etc., that success in life is about what I have and not about the kind of person and the character that I'm being trained to develop. We tell our kids in school that it's about self-esteem and self-actualization, but we don't talk about self-control. We don't talk about selflessness. We talk about selfhood. And so what's happening, again, I'm not saying there's no schools that don't teach kids these things, but it's not the primary objective of what we're trying to educate our kids with, when yet I'm sure that as parents we would be much happier kids should grow up to be good people than to be knowledgeable people that are bad, don't have good character. Now listen to the following statistics. Yeah, so far, any thoughts? Good? We're good. Okay, listen to these statistics. Between 1992 and 2012, the Josephson Institute of Ethics issued a biennial report on the ethics of American high school kids. This is the largest, most comprehensive study done in America on the attitudes of student behavior, which obviously is probably the best predictor of how these kids will behave growing up, how they view, what their thought process in high school. So if you look at this page 202, figure 6.1, we're not going to read it all out loud, but look at it for a second. And if there's any particular statistics that come out to you, both good or bad, please feel free to share. Which statistic is most bothersome to you? And if there's any statistics that are encouraging to you.
I think personal relationships, trust and honesty are essential. That 98% agree.
And that's beautiful.
It's a good thing.
That is a good statistic. Only 2% of students disagree with the idea that if you want to have a successful relationship, you need to be honest and be trustworthy. That's great.
So the lying, so you go through all of these things about lying.
Honesty and lying, yes. Bad news.
That's really bad. I mean, it's, but again, a lot of what you're talking about, it's not education, it's government. Because government decides what's taught, and government funds how they teach. So it's government.
We do have the power. It's not so simple. We're like the school board. Yes, I'm not saying that me and you. There's issues. There's systemic issues.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just making an observation.
Look at some of these numbers. Any thought? Do you realize that 36% of students thought that in order to succeed, you're going to have to lie and cheat in life?
Well,
That's the lesson they're learning from somewhere. No one ever told them that formally.
But yet 86% agreed that it's not worth it to cheat or lie because it hurts your character. That's contradictory.
Say again, which one?
It's not worth it to lie or cheat because it hurts your character. That's contradictory to what you just said.
Yes.
Look at the third, you do whatever you can to win, basically.
A person will do whatever they can to win. And what percent will do whatever they can? 57. So although we recognize that they're hurting their character, to them what's more important, what comes out from these statistics, you're making an excellent point. More kids to them it's more important to succeed than to hurt their character. So they recognize that lying is not good for good character, But if I want to succeed, I have to lie and cheat. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. I've been trained, I've been conditioned that you have to become a success story. So they haven't been conditioned you have to grow up to be a good person, to be a mensch. They've been told many more times, if you don't do good in school, you're not going to succeed. Then they've been told, if you're not going to be kind, you're not going to be a mensch.
So I teach my,
One second. Yeah, well, yes. Yeah.
so I teach my kids both, right? Because I want my kids to do well in school. But when we're home, I teach them, I said, success isn't financial. Success is a happy marriage, success is a good relationship, success is giving to others, to helping others. I mean, and again, it comes down to parenting. It just does.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And we have to counterbalance this perspective that's being given them in school in the limited time we have.
Time to do it.
I'm questioning one of these things.
Well, this is the data. I didn't make this up. This is...
Bullying in school, because there have been so many cases, a huge amount that disagree, but there have been so many cases of people committing suicide because of it. I had my own.
I think a lot of kids don't appreciate the effect of what bullying is, although it's changing. We're not talking about bullying today. The point is that we have to make a fundamental change in the way we think of our kids. Now, I'm not done yet. If we have time for another 15 minutes, I want to get to another very important factor, which is called the fudge factor. The fudge factor, if someone needs to go, they can go. It's okay, I won't be personally offended. But the fudge factor is kind of saying there's contradictions a little bit in some of these things. Most people will lie, and they'll still consider themselves good people. Right? Listen to the following video. I want to show you an amazing video. This is done by a professor called Professor Rielli. Oops. This one is on.
Don't a lot of people cheat on their income tax?
Yes.
And they don't think it's cheating or lying, but it is, of course it is.
Absolutely.
You know, I always teach people, even when I speak in the jails and stuff, I teach people you can lie to people and get away with it, and it doesn't affect the people you're lying to, but you always go and perfect yourself. Because you know, there is only the truth. There is only the truth, and you innately know what the truth is.
Excellent, excellent. Watch this.
Hi, my name is Dan Ariely. I'm the James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University. And I want to talk a little bit about ethics. But before I start, I want to explain my half a beard. Many years ago, I was badly burned, so much of my body is covered with scars, including the right side of my face. And the standard theory, and the thing that is driving the justice system, but also our thought, is that there's some good apples and bad apples, and that's it. And what protects us, we are the good apples, is that we're good, and that is going to actually protect us against being bad, and we only need to worry about the bad apples. But is this really the case? How many people here have cheated since the beginning of 2012? Okay. Lied. Yes, of course. At the same time, how many people here think of yourself as generally good, honest, wonderful people? And this is the conundrum I want us to think about. On one hand, we admit that we're able to be dishonest. On the other hand, we think of ourselves as honest people. How can we do both? And what I would like to propose is that human beings basically try to do two things at the same time. On one hand, we want to be able to look in the mirror and feel good about ourselves. On the other hand, we want to benefit from being dishonest. Now you could say you could do one or the other. You can either look at yourself as honest or you could benefit from dishonesty. You can't do both. Well, it turns out that thanks to our flexible cognitive psychology and thanks to our ability to rationalize our actions, we could do both. Let me describe to you how we measure dishonesty. Imagine you were all in the experiment. I would pass you a sheet of paper with 20 simple math problems, and I would say you have 5 minutes to solve as many of those as you can. I'll give you $1 per question. Go! You would turn off the page, you will start working as fast as you can. At the end of the 5 minutes, I would say, please stop. Count how many questions you got correctly. and now go to the back of the room and shred your piece of paper. And once you finish shredding it, come to me and tell me how many questions you got correctly. People do this, they count, they shred, they come to me and they say they solved 6 problems, we pay them $6. What the people in the experiment don't know is that the shredder has been fixed. So the shredder only shreds the sides of the page, but the main body of the page remains intact. We can jump into the recycling bin, we can find out how many questions people really solved correctly. What do we find? On average, people solve 4 problems and report to be solving 6. There are very few big cheaters, and there are a ton of little cheaters. All of us have the capacity to cheat a little bit, and by the way, still think of ourselves as good people. So imagine that rationalization is like a balloon or machine, and as rationalization increases, our capacity to rationalize increase, we can be more dishonest and feel okay about ourselves. And as our capacity to rationalizing decrease, it's harder for us to be dishonest and feel good about ourselves. So let me turn it to you and let us think for a few minutes together about what kind of things would get people to rationalize to a higher degree. So imagine we run the same experiment in here, but we hire an acting student, and we ask that acting student to sit in the front row and 30 seconds into the experiment to raise their hand and said, "Excuse me, I solved everything, what do I do now?" And the experimenter said, "You solved everything, get your full payment and go home." Now, if you're in the experiment, you're still on problem number 1. There's no question in your mind that that person cheated, right? There's no way they could solve all 20, but you see them taking all the money and going home. What would happen to your own morality? Lots more people cheat. So here's one experiment we did. We went to coffee shops in Boston, and we asked people, "Hey, would you do this experiment for us for 5 minutes for $5? Everybody said yes. We gave them the task. We explained to them what they were supposed to do to fill some paperwork. Then we came back 5 minutes later, and we said, "Here's your $5. Please count it and sign a receipt for $5. But we actually gave them $9. How many people do you think would return the money? Slightly more than 50% of the people returned the money, and you could decide for yourself if this is a high number or a low number. In the second condition, when the research assistant explained to them the experiment, they interrupted in the middle, they pretended that somebody was calling them, they picked up the phone, they ignored the participant, and they talked for 12 seconds to John about pizza. Put the phone down, went back to explaining the results. Now when they gave $9 to people at the end of the experiment, what happened? Almost nobody returned the money back. Now, if you were a participant, you could think to yourself that you're kind of doing justice to the world, right? Here is somebody that just offended you, and you're restoring karma by taking their money back. Imagine that you have a friend, and imagine that you care about this friend. And now, if you're dishonest, this friend gets to benefit as well. What would happen? So in one experiment, we did this. We measured how much people are dishonest when they stand to gain from their dishonesty, and we measured what happened if the other person gets to gain to benefit from their dishonesty as well. And what we saw is that when somebody else gets to benefit, people are more dishonest. What would get people to cheat less? We went to UCLA, Los Angeles, and we asked about 500 students to try and recall the 10 Commandments. By the way, none of them could remember all 10 Commandments, and they invented lots of interesting ones. But after trying to recall the 10 Commandments, when we gave them the same opportunity to be dishonest, nobody was dishonest. In fact, even when we take self-declared atheists and we ask them to swear in the Bible, and we give them a chance to cheat, they don't cheat. So this suggests that there's something about reminders that the moment we think about morality, even if it's not our own moral code, all of a sudden we're kind of supervising ourselves to a higher degree. We're more thoughtful about our own actions, and as a consequence, we let ourselves get away with less activities. Most of the attempts to try and reduce dishonesty are about the time after. If you'll behave badly, we'll catch you and maybe put you in jail. That turns out doesn't really matter. It means we need to think about the time before, which is where education is. how do we get people to have rules for behavior, to have moral standing? This is the task ahead of us, and it's something we have to do.
Okay, so this is a whole nother perspective. Very interesting. Absolutely it is. Oopsies. Why? Because basically, even if we were to assume that we were teaching morals and values and ethics in school, let's say we were. Let's say we were telling our kids that being honest is important, that being ethical is important, that being a good person is important. We told them all that. Nevertheless, they would still sometimes cheat because the human nature of a human being is to try and justify and to rationalize why it's okay for me to cheat on my taxes or why it's okay for me to defraud this company, return the item I bought for 2 weeks to use and return it back to the store and get a new one, etc. We have all kinds of rationalization. You brought up a whole bunch of interesting things, right? Say everyone else is doing, he's cheating, so I can cheat. Or what difference does my $20 make to this multi-billion-dollar, Amazon needs my $20. They don't deserve it. They treat their people like terrible. They do, by the way, but they don't deserve it. Yeah. Oh, it's a good place. Okay, fine. But the point is that even if we were to have these values alone that are not rooted in something absolute,